Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I have two things here. Let's start with SkyVector. This is skyvector.com. It's a good website that basically lets you visualize airspace sectionals, which are flying maps. You can think of them as. The FAA maintains them, and they're updated. Right now, they're updated once every 60 days. And yeah, they're basically how we see airspace. So Tiger Mountain is this H right here in the middle of the screen with the glider symbol. You know, according to the FAA, we're ultralights, and whenever they're talking about hang gliders, they're talking about paragliders and hang gliders. So that H is a hang glider symbol, so, and we're included in that. So that we're on the sectional so that people know that there's intensive hang gliding and paragliding activity in that area. And you can see the main borders we have around us there is this blue border, right? And
Mitch, do you have, are you able to use the mouse at all to indicate that?
Sorry, I'm on a tablet, so I'm
Oh.
not able to use the mouse, but I'll try to zoom in on where I'm talking about.
Okay.
You can kind of see right now the vertical axis of the border to the right and left of the screen. So that blue border right there is a Class B shelf around the Seattle airport, SeaTac. And our section of the border right here, the Class B airspace is from 5,000 to 10,000 feet above sea level, meaning that it is controlled airspace. You have to be talking with air traffic control to be flying from 5,000 feet to 10,000 feet right there at Tiger. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
And then if you bounce back just a little bit, the H is kind of right on the line. In actual fact, it's between takeoff and the antennas. It bumps up to 6,000 feet to 10,000 feet. So we can all see that right there.
Yep.
So that's the Class B immediately around Tiger. And it's no messing around stuff. Lots and lots of planes are transitioning through that airspace on instrument approaches coming into SeaTac. And it's a busy place. And if we ever wanted to have a chance of ultralights being banned in the US, it'd be, it would be a jumbo jet going down because of a crash. So gliders flying up in that area is a pretty reckless thing to do, in my opinion, and not very nice to your fellow pilots. So some other places where, so a lot of the places we fly under 5,000 feet and you're good, except for kind of where you get towards the north end of Lake Sammamish. Sometimes people are landing at the north end of Lake Sammamish, or maybe even crossing halfway across. This next one is a 3,000 foot shelf. You can see this box here is a 3,000 to 10,000 foot box. So if you are flying the north side of Lake Sammamish, or you're flying kind of halfway across Lake Sammamish, or the other side of Squawk Mountain right here, you're getting into that box that's starts at 3,000 feet. The Squawk Mountain one, not many people are flying there. And then down south, if you're getting into the Covington area, where are we here? Yeah, if you're getting into the Covington area, just past Maple Valley, once again, it goes to 3,000 feet right there. So the SkyVector is also pretty nice because it will tell us about TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. And you can see this red box, right? This red circle right in the middle of the screen. Let's see, there it is. If I click on that, it takes me here. And this is actually an amended one. This one's not, it's a NOTAM, but it was a TFR. The only reason it's not a TFR is you're allowed to transition through there if you're in a flight plan and talking to ATC, air traffic control. So they'll let you transition through there to do the approach into Boeing Field, for instance. And this particular one is for a sporting event. Another example that's kind of a cool example that I just saw today is if we look down at Portland, we can see this big one, right? This is a proper TFR. So we hit that, and hold on one second here. Let me hit there.
A TFR or is that a NOTAM?
There, you know, set. Here we go. Yeah, this is a. This is another one that, unless authorized by ATC, so it's effectively a TFR unless you're on with ATC and they directly give you permission to go through it. And it's funny because this just changed from when I looked at it an hour ago, but this is a VIP one, or an hour ago it was a VIP TFR. Maybe the VIP has left, but it was a Secret Service implemented one. Yes, look, they're temporary flight restriction for VIP movement. So it is a TFR. And a TFR is in the category of NOTAM, right? NOTAM means notice to all airmen. A TFR is a type of NOTAM.
Got it.
So that's one way to visualize it. And if you're used to looking at sectionals and all that, it's a great way to visualize it. I highly recommend you get used to looking at sectionals. And one really easy way to do it is to just order the local sectional, right? It'll be out of date in 60 days, but that's okay if yours is out of date, because the local sectional, when you get the hard copy, you'll have a key on the side, and you'll be, you know, it's a really fun map to look at. It has all sorts of interesting stuff like mountain names, the boundaries of national parks, you know, river names, all that stuff. And so I'd kind of recommend at some point, you know, they're $7.99 to buy the hard copy, and it's worth having one, if nothing else, just to learn how to read it well. One tool that's pretty good for us that's made for paragliders is this flyxc.app. This is now like Ozone sponsored, but Tom Payne originally wrote this, and it used to be called XC Planner. Now it's Ozone sponsored and flyxc.app, but you can see we have a similar thing, right? It's giving us the same airspace. Now, when I click the one, and this is kind of cool because we have, let's see, we have live track set up on this one. So we can see Alex today, and you know, we can see his flight from today from his live track. So he had like live track 24 or something running today where we can see him. So that's kind of a cool tool. But if I click on this airspace, we can see it's Seattle Class B area from 6,000 feet to 10,000 feet, right? And then right here, Seattle Class B, 5,000 to 10, here 3,000 to 10. So, you know, this is a pretty good flight planning tool for finding X contest routes, triangles to do, where airspace is, kind of all sorts of stuff like that. You can even do a sounding forecast on here. So this is definitely something to dig into. And if you're going to a new site, or if you're not familiar with the airspace, guys, it's really every pilot's responsibility to get familiar with this stuff. There's not much excuse for flying into restricted airspace. And the rundown is, we are allowed to fly in airspace where we're not required to be on the radio with air traffic control. And basically that means we are not allowed to fly in Class A. In the US, Class A is 18,000 feet and above. So we're not allowed to fly in Class A. We're not allowed to fly in Class B. Those are big airports. C are pretty big airports. D, also we're not allowed to fly in. A, B, C, or D. D is fairly big airports. And then we're allowed to fly in most E and all G. And when I say most E, I'll try to find an E that we're not supposed to fly in.
And Class D airspace is military, isn't it?
No, sir. No. Class D is right here. You see this dotted blue line? That dotted blue line right there?
Yeah.
That's Class D. So in this case, it's around Everett. That's Class D right there. So Class D are just like not tiny airports and not giant airports, somewhere in between. So around here, Everett, Renton is a Class D. You can see that dotted blue line at Renton, and Boeing Field is also a Class D. This whole area is pretty jumbled for seeing things, but you can see that dotted line at Boeing Field right there. So those are all Class Ds.
Hey, Mitch, I have a question.
Sure.
Pangborn in Wenatchee, I think it's Class E, and I've heard different things.
Pangborn and Wenatchee is Class D, yeah.
D or E?
Let's see, where are we here? Oh, it's not E.
There it is. Oh,
Can you search in this?
Wait,
tool?
that's
north
Wenatchee
a
right
little
here,
bit.
yeah.
There it is, yeah.
No, so Pangborn is not. That's Class E, meaning it has a protected instrument approach. So surface Class E, what you're seeing right there, yeah, technically you're supposed to have, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So now we're looking at a red dashed line. Everyone see that? Or a magenta, you call it, dashed line. For there, you're supposed to have air traffic control's permission to go into it. So that's the Class E where you're supposed to have permission. You see, in most of the US, it's Class G from the surface to either 700 feet or 1,200 feet. One way to think about it is Class G is where they don't have radar control, right? Basically where the radars can't pick you up. So they can't pick you up next to the ground because there's too much ground interference. But they have heightened radar control where they have instrument approaches into busy airports that aren't towered airports. So Pangborn is not a towered airport. We see there's no towered frequency here, but it has Class E surface sign. So yeah, technically you're not supposed to fly through there. And this is actually something that Loopy has, Loopy got some of Cedar's ex-contest scores removed from the US League because Cedar flew through some surface E, and there was a fairly big talk about it. And of course, Revis was the intermediary because he runs the league. And it's fairly clear after looking at all the FARs, the regulations, that Loopy was right, that we're not supposed to be flying through surface Class E's. Now, what you can do and what we have done in the past is call either air traffic control for the area. So this is in the Seattle area. So you could call up 122.6 and ask permission. Really, you'd find the phone number for the air traffic control and do it. Or you could call the airport manager at Pangborn and ask. So at the beginning of the day, if you thought you might fly through there, if you either call the airport manager or you call Seattle Center and say, hey, we have a few glider pilots, we're expecting to fly through there in 2 hours. Is that okay? When Revis and I have done that for airports in California before, they've kind of laughed and like, well, yeah, it's Class E, of course you can. So, yeah.
Thank you. Good to know.
Yeah, that's kind of one where technically it's a no-no, but when you call ATC, they act like, of course you can, so.
Yeah, because I flew through it on accident once, not knowing, and I got called out. So I was wondering, and then I've heard different things about that Class E airspace, but
yeah,
I
so
guess
it's Class E to the surface, which otherwise E is not denoted. So here's another one connected to Everett. This is the one I was looking for. You see that one right there, the dashed magenta.
Yeah.
So that's another Class E to the surface that that you're not supposed to fly through without ATC permission.
I got a comment on that one.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at the Everett one, and you'll see that the extension, the purple, does not go around the airport, unlike Pangborn. And FAA and USPA have agreed that we are allowed to fly through the extensions if they do not go around the airport.
Oh.
And
So
that was published on the USPA website.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I didn't see that. That's interesting.
Moses,
Yeah.
Right,
like,
because that was always confusing for especially for Woodrat, because we always had tasks through the extension, and now a lawyer could argue it either way, and now it's being clarified that we are allowed in those as long as it's not like Pangborn where the dashed magenta goes around the airport.
Okay.
So Pangborn's a no-no, but Everett would be okay, even though it would be unwise.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. I wasn't aware of that. I remember actually that situation in Woodrat, and I remember that we used to call ATC before sending those tasks, right?
Right, and
Yeah.
that's been clarified. I don't know how legally clarified it is if there was an accident, but certainly it was published on the USPA website.
Well, that's pretty legit. Yeah. Good call. Thank you, Wheeler.
Cool. Excellent.
Did you have a question, George?
No, I think Moses Lake was one where we were flying from Saddle once and we were questioning that extension piece. What makes it an extension is the fact that you have a dashed circle around the airport and then you have another square off of it, right? And that's the extension.
Yeah, and in that one that we were talking about, what it is the airport is in Class D, right? The blue circle, the blue dash is Class D, and then the extension is Class E.
Yeah, so the extension is
Class
the
E
square
circle.
that extends from it. But the fact that there's a full circle, that's what makes it an extension and not part of it.
That's what it sounds like, yeah. And but in this case, the blue dash is a definite no-no.
Yep.
So then let's look at what just happened there. Where did I go?
Whoa, zoomed way in or way out?
I'm gonna press reload and see what happens. Huh.
Oh, you switched to World VFR. Oh wait, that's what you're looking at. Never mind. You went to Alaska.
I just went. Yeah, that was off the planet or something. Is this the right country or is this Africa? No, this is it. So
Always knew
then
the world
we
was
should-
flat.
Exactly. So then we should talk about restricted, and we might as well talk about the stuff near Baldy since that's a common place for people to go. Ellensburg, Baldy. There we go. So here's another one, the restricteds, right? So you can see this restricted. This is R6714 alpha. And these are no-nos to fly through when they're active. And to know when they're active, sometimes they're published when they're active. Let's see about this. Desert Area Regional. No, that's an airport. No, it's not telling us about it. Let's see if they tell us about it in the FlyXC one. Yeah, so this one's instituted by NOTAM. And we'd have to look up NOTAMs and see if it's active. You can call up ATC and ask if it's active. What I'd usually do is call up 1-800-WX.
Слушай, Кис, я тебе сейчас одну штуку пришлю.
Oh, sorry. Mute them.
So what I'd usually do, there's this service that's a taxpayer service, WX Brief. So it's a 1-800 number. There's a website too, 1-800-WX Brief, and it's made for pilots. And you could say, hey, I'm planning a flight. It's all right to say I'm an ultralight pilot planning a flight from Bowers Field to Yakima, and I'd like to know if our restricted area 6714 alpha is active today, and then they'll tell you if it's active or not. This particular one is usually inactive on weekends and holidays.
Not true. That alpha is always active.
It's
just
the
the
other
ones
one.
around the edge that are not, like the 6714F, G, and H.
Okay.
But alphas, yeah, that's never been not active in my experience of 20 years of flying there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yep.
So
And
I have
then,
a question
sorry, go ahead.
regarding that, since you guys know, but there's the 4.5 there, which is 4,500. Is that meaningful to us in any way? It's not like we can fly below or above that, right? That's
No,
mostly for
four-
them.
four, five-
So
the
that's
number that you're
the
seeing
highest
there-
altitude in that sector. That's the highest terrain.
Okay.
So that 3.8 is the highest terrain in that sector. So 4 or 5 is just the highest mountain in that sector. It doesn't have to do with that restricted area.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you see
in
all
terms
these
of-
altitudes are just sector high points.
The restricted airspace there is basically up to 0 atmospheric pressure.
It goes to outer space. Oh, come on.
It
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
That's the bombing range. So yeah, they launch missiles in there.
All right.
And in general, restricted areas will not have altitudes. They're just completely restricted. Yeah.
Good to know.
There's quite a few different kinds of things along the lines of restricted. So like here we have a national security thing. So reasons of national security, pilots are requested to avoid all flight at and below 1800 in this area. So you know, and it does say
Nuclear
requested.
radiation.
Yeah, it could be radiation. It could be they have some big things there. It could be that if you did land there, you'd get surrounded by black SUVs. It's yeah.
It's the Hanford, old Hanford plant.
Oh, that's the nuclear radiation area. Yeah, yeah, good
Mhm.
call.
Oh, we run in. That's the one we run into when we fly from Saddle, right?
Yeah,
If you're
if you
going
go
south,
south.
yeah.
Important.
Well,
Important one to know.
So here's some examples of MOAs. So MOAs are military operations area, and it's just it's a place where there's intensive military training is basically what it is, and there's no regulation about flying or not flying through MOAs. You know, planes can do it, we can do it, the whole bit, but you ought to be aware that it's intensive military traffic, and you know, you ought to kind of plan accordingly. So, you know, if you can avoid a MOA, it's good to avoid it, and you know, I guess have your head on a swivel. And then, you know, a lot of these are just recommendations: congested area, intensive flight training area, stuff like that. I guess another question's been posed to me a bunch that kind of goes in this line. I might stop my screen sharing for, well, I'll leave it on. A lot of people have asked me, hey, what are the right-of-way rules as it pertains to paragliders? And, you know, in the FAA regulations, we're in this classification ultralight, right? And for everything except for ultralight, the rules are basically the slowest craft has the right-of-way. So hot air balloons have the right-of-way over blimps, airships, and airships have the right-of-way over sailplanes, and sailplanes over helicopters, and helicopters over planes, right? So basically the slower traffic has the right of way, which is pretty logical, because it's hard for a hot air balloon to get out of the way of a jet, right? Now that's true for everything except ultralights. And then for ultralights, it says ultralights shall give way to all other traffic. So sadly, we're at the very bottom of the heap for right of way. Obviously, from a physics standpoint, it's not like I'm going to be able to dodge an airplane moving at 300 knots on my 20-mile-an-hour paraglider. But, you know, I get asked that question a lot. And sadly, from the regulations, we're bottom of the stack as far as right-of-way rules. We're supposed to give way to everyone else.
Yeah, we had in that light, be aware that there are small airports around the area that we're just unaware of. Like there's one in North Bend that is very seldomly used, but it is occasionally used. And when that happens, we've had pilots stating that there have been paragliders basically flying at like pattern altitude, which is what they have to do in order to land. And in their eye, that is basically interfering with their flight operations. So it's things that we should be aware of. So maybe Mitch can tell us what that means for small airports and what pattern altitude is. I think it's something like 1,100 feet right above the airport, but I'm not.
Typical pattern altitude is 1,000 feet over the airport. You know, in general, everybody out there, us included, if we're not in instrument meteorological conditions, meaning if we're not in clouds, and we're never supposed to be in clouds, then it's a see and avoid system, right? So I know the instance you're talking about the Falls City Airport, and I've got to say that guy was in the wrong for being pissed off, but you know, whatever. So yeah, it is a good idea to study up a little bit on how airport traffic patterns work. And one really nice thing is if you know how airport traffic patterns work, then you also know how to land a paraglider at an airport without getting in anyone's way. And that's a really beneficial thing to know how to do, because airports are wide open spaces with tons of windsocks around, and typically pretty friendly people towards aviation there. And after a big XC flight, typically people who are kind of looking for excuses to fly their planes also, so you might get a free ride back. So I would recommend everyone spend a little time researching, hey, what does a traffic pattern in an airport look at like? How high are they on upwind and on crosswind and on downwind and on base and on final? And if you kind of know that, you know how to not get in their way if you're anywhere near an airport. And you also know how to land at an airport, not getting in their way, which can get you a free airplane ride home. It's pretty good.
Nice. Sound solid advice. Thank you, Mitch.
Yeah.
Hey, Mitch, Barry Jesperson here. I got a quick question for you.
Sure. Hey, Barry.
Friday, the president's coming, and I'm assuming he's landing at Boeing Field. There'll be a TFR around Boeing Field. Does that affect us as paragliders?
I think it's about what just happened at Portland. It looks to me like like this outer circle at Portland is absolutely giant, right? And this is a VIP area. So if that's what they're doing to us, I think we'll be inside something that big.
I think it's 30 miles, and I think the president is going to Portland on Thursday, then coming up here, so it could have been associated with that. But so 30 nautical mile ring out of Boeing Field would definitely encompass Tiger Mountain. So I'm
that's us.
Then we're grounded.
We're grounded, and all the small airports in the area will be grounded also. All the planes will be.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you fly that day, make sure that you make it worthwhile and go heavily packed with automatic weapons. So at least make it worthwhile.
You're ready to shoot a lot of video because that's the only thing you'll be you'll be
right.
doing.
You guys know Zoom's probably recording, huh? Using the word president and automatic weapons in the same topic is a bad idea. That good. Thanks for bringing that up, Barry. I had no idea that was happening on Thursday. That's the other thing as a club and as kind of just good citizens, we should make sure we do. If we hear about a TFR or a NOTAM or hear about new airspace popping up or something like that, make a note of it on the Telegram chat and let people know kind of ASAP. One other thing that happens all the time in the summer, especially on the eastern side of the state, is TFRs due to fires, right? And they're changing day by day. It's really, if you're flying the eastern side of the state in August or even July, you have to stay up on the fire TFRs. And it's good to kind of inform each other about that if anyone hears of one. And really, we should all be looking at something like SkyVector to find them in the morning.
Absolutely. Great advice.
Hey, Barry, do you have any other thoughts or advice about interacting with airports and planes and in the airspace system?
Yeah, don't interact with airplanes. It doesn't end well. So, they just recently did have an accident. I believe it was in Texas, maybe several months ago.
Yeah.
I think it was a powered paraglider, and it was a tragic thing. And times that I've been flying at Tiger, since I am a private pilot and have passions for both, I see planes come through the gap there between Squawk and Tiger, and I always kind of cringe because I don't think a lot of pilots always look at those symbols on the map or pay attention to the fact that there are paragliders until it's too late. But you did a great job. You covered everything. Those maps can be a little bit overwhelming, and I use ForeFlight, not SkyVector, and it's the same sort of thing. There's sometimes I'm one of those geeks. I can just pull one of these maps up and I just love looking at it, because every time I look at it, I learn something, even though I've been doing this for a while. And it's always good just to refresh too, and kind of know what you're looking at when you look at one of these aeronautical maps.
Yeah, and I guess to give people an update on what the future may hold, you know, in countries other than the US, Canada, and Mexico, planes and soaring pilots and ultralights all have, I'm forgetting the name of it now, but the, anyway, a radio type antenna where they can see each other, kind of like our ADS-B, but lighter weight and less battery use, so that planes can actually see you as if they're seeing you on radar. That was called FLARM,
Thank
Flare
you,
and
Lorena.
FLARM. Yep. And it seems like lighter and lighter ADS-B solutions, which is the system like FLARM that's used in the US, but it's higher power and therefore higher battery consumption. It seems like they're making them lighter and lighter, specifically for drones. And pretty soon, I think we'll have a device that, you know, weighs less than a couple pounds, is about the size of a battery pack, and broadcast, and probably costs, you know, in less than $500. I think we'll have that within the next few years. And in my opinion, that would be a no-brainer for my budget. Like, just to have something like that where I could say, hey, if the plane's paying attention at all, they can get a traffic advisory off their ForeFlight or off their avionics, and they'll actually see me on their screen. So in the next few years, I think we'll see something like that that's available to us.
Yeah, I personally fly with a passive unit in my wing. I've got a radar reflector that I've actually tested it with ATC, and they can in fact see me when I'm at the right altitude. So
What's that made of?
it's actually made of Mylar that is intersected in 3 ways, 90 degrees in each axis. So one on the XY, one on the YZ, and one on the XZ. And I've got it inside a little ball. It's like a little Christmas ornament, and it just hangs right up inside the baffles in my my wing, so it's out of the stream and everything. And I've tested it, and it actually shows up on radar. So
Wow.
Oh, cool.